Ciao, buongiorno a tutti ragazzi. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of the Inter Worldwide podcast. And I am very excited. It is an honor and a pleasure to introduce a special guest with us today. We have the host of the very popular Calcioland podcast. He is also an editor at Dimasio and a current contributor for The Athletic and ESPN. Thank you so much for joining us on the Inter Worldwide podcast, Mr. David Amoyal.
Real pleasure to be on. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I love your enthusiasm, so I'm glad to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And one of our regular suspects over there in San Francisco, Alessandro. How you doing, man?
Very good. I'm so excited for this Christmas present.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to be able to jump right into a few topics of conversation. And first of all, a big shout out and thank you to all those who sent in questions on Reddit, Forza Inter forums, and all of our connecting WhatsApp and Facebook groups as well. So we'll start off with the current trajectory of the season. The first question is pretty open-ended, David. We've got Inter doing everything they can to pressure Juventus. Inzaghi, who I have a lot of respect for, is actually getting Lazio involved in a three-way fight for the Scudetto. At least that's what the points on the table would tell us at the moment. David, what are your thoughts on the opening start half of the season for these three big clubs, and who do you think can carry it on? Do you think Lazio falls off the pace? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I think Lazio is a great story. Anyone who's listened to my podcast the past few years know that, I tend to rate them maybe a little bit higher than most. I've always been very impressed with their individual talent. I think the past few years, you take the five best players on Lazio, and this is when De Vrij was there, and then Acerbi replaced them really well. You had Milinkovic-Savic, Luis Alberto, Immobile, Lucas Leiva, Correa. To me, that's a great nucleus. I actually, I'll take that with almost any team in Serie A, but it never really worked as a unit. I think Lazio this season, the continuity has helped, but I don't buy them as Scudetto contenders. I think the fact that Juve and Inter have had substantial injuries and are ahead of them now, to me, explains why they're not contenders. Lazio have been really healthy. Everything's gone their way. When you look at the past few seasons, they didn't make the Champions League. They came close. Already making a comfortable qualification to the Champions League would be a big achievement. They're kind of like in the boat Inter was like 2 years ago. So great story, but I don't think they'll be there long term. Inter, you have to be really happy with how things went. I never felt they were that into the Champions League this season. I think they were definitely going to prioritize Serie A kind of in a way like Napoli did 2 years ago. I think Conte, we know the formula. His first year at Juve and Chelsea wasn't in Europe, ends up winning the title. I think that's kind of what they're looking to do. You have to be very happy because the Inter squad isn't as deep as Juve's. They've had injuries. We're recording this before the Genoa match, but they are right there with them. So I think Juve has to take them seriously. In years past, we know Inter has started strong and then fallen off, but the difference is they didn't have Marotta and Conte in charge, and I think that's the big difference. So no, I think if you're an Inter fan, and I am assuming almost everyone listening to this has to be very happy. I think Juve is still rightfully the favorite. If you want to be the champ, you have to beat the champ. But I think Inter have more than a decent chance to hang in there and be contenders till the end.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Moving a little bit more down the table at the moment, everybody was shocked at Napoli appointing Gennaro Gattuso to take over the helm from his former manager at AC Milan, Carlo Ancelotti. As I get older and I hit my older years, it's just becoming more surreal and bizarre seeing some of these names join up and link up together. Whether or not Gattuso succeeds at Napoli remains to be seen, both in the short and the long term. David, before I go over to Alessandro, how do you think it's going to shape out for Gattuso? And what do you think is a realistic expectation for him to do with this Napoli side by the end of the season?
So look, I think the best case scenario, and it's going to be hard, is that they somehow make a huge comeback and nail that fourth place in Serie A. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, A, because it's a lot of points, and B, there's some good teams ahead of them. I think Juve and Inter are locks for the Champions League. I think Lazio has a pretty good chance. And then you have Roma, you have Atalanta, who I think are going to make a run in the second half of the season. They're very strong. I don't think Milan can get back in the mix. I think Cagliari are a great story, but I don't think they'll be like Atalanta. I think they're going to tail off. So, I mean, Napoli clearly has a lot of talent. I almost picked them to win the Scudetto. We'll see. I think Gattuso, though, he has to be very happy. I mean, who would have thought that when he was hired at Milan at the beginning and we thought he'd be another legend that would just burn out at Milan, he did enough to earn the right to replace Ancelotti on what has been the second best team in Serie A for the past few years. So good for him. It's a tough situation because you got to wonder if those players quit on Ancelotti or if they quit on De Laurentiis. And if they quit on De Laurentiis, which is probably more the case, I'm not sure how much Gattuso can do about that.
Yeah, Gattuso received a lot of respect for being able to extract that grinta, that extra little bit of motivation and aggression out of his players at Milan. So I guess maybe we could see a short-term resurgence to form. Obviously, we didn't see it against Parma, but you never know until the end of the season. Maybe Gattuso can get them back into the European mix. For me personally, I don't see his reign at Napoli extending much further than this season. Alessandro, over to you. What are your thoughts on the Gattuso appointment, and how long do you think his career is going to last in Naples, Alessandro?
So pretty much you guys said everything I was thinking. Probably at the end of the year, if he's able to reach the Europa League, maybe can extend for a second year. Otherwise, if we finish this project this year, and then a lot of players probably they'll move in other teams and or they and their contracts. So Napoli is in a weird situation at the moment. I wouldn't expect that at the beginning of the season. I was actually thinking they will be right there to contend the Scudetto with Juventus and us. As you guys said, it really depends if the player were not playing for Ancelotti or for the president. And after one game, it's really hard to say. They will compete for the Coppa Italia for sure. I don't know the Champions League. I think Ancelotti is still a lot to say in the Champions League or that kind of competition more than the Scudetto. And while Gattuso probably is the opposite. So it's an interesting situation, and I'm curious to see how it extend by the end of the year.
Yeah, thank you. Sticking on Milan, keeping it consistent. Milan, they tend to be playing with a little bit more enthusiasm and a little bit more of identity under Pioli. We've seen this in the past. Pioli is able to come into a team and reset the tactics. And I think it's almost like he's a great introductory coach for a new team looking to switch it up and get something fresh. But we've seen the longevity of his career always has its limits. David, what are your thoughts on Pioli being sort of a semi-caretaker at Milan until the end of the season? Or do you think he can do enough with them this season to extend his run? What are your thoughts on Milan's situation?
Well, look, in some ways, it's reminiscent of when Pioli took over at Inter. I thought he had done a really good job until the end when we really had a Pazza Inter collapse. But we are seeing, kind of a lot of the same things on Milan. He's had a positive impact on them. Look, I think he's not like a coach you can win the Scudetto with, but if you want to compete for a Champions League spot, if you give him the right squad, I think he can do it. If you put a gun to my head, I would say Pioli is going to be Milan's manager next season as well. I say that A, because I believe in what he's doing, and B, because of the financial fair play situation. I don't think Milan will be back in the Champions League next season. I just don't know how attractive that job is. So gun to the head, I think Pioli is going to do pretty well the rest of the season. Maybe Milan can get to the Europa League, but I think he's showing enough now, and I think they're not going to have a better alternative next summer. So my guess is he stays at least through the beginning of next season.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Let's move a little bit more down to the bottom of the league at the moment. I love seeing some of the smaller teams fight for their 3 points. You can really see some of the good to come out toward the back ends of those games. Hellas Verona, Brescia, and Lecce are the three sides that jumped up from Serie B this season, and all three of them have enjoyed semi spells this season where they look to be forming an identity, look to fall into form. But just like many teams with a depleted squad and with a lack of resources, they obviously can't fight tooth and nail as long as some other teams can. So, David, Hellas Verona, Brescia, Lecce, talk a little bit about these teams. Who's impressed you the most so far? But more importantly, who out of these three can survive the drop?
Man, they're an interesting group because Brescia started the season well. I think, the decision to fire Corini was completely idiotic. It was on what Genoa did with Ballardini the year before. To Brescia's credit, they didn't wait too long to realize they made a terrible mistake, especially bringing in Grosso. So at the start of the season, you would have said they were the team who had the best chance of staying up. I got to be honest, I didn't know many players on Lecce and Verona squads, but I've been very impressed with their two managers. They're really polar opposites. Liverani plays an offensive style. He kind of reminds me of De Zerbi, who came up at Sassuolo, made a name for himself there. They kind of have a similar style, an anonymous roster where they play really well. Verona has been, in a lot of ways, really the surprise of the season. Juric, who when he was at Crotone was considered really one of the best up-and-coming managers in the lower divisions in Italy, really struggled at Genoa both times he coached them, and he's been great this season. Verona has a few players that have done well and that are now on the radars of some pretty big teams. Amrabat is a player that Inter are after as well. Seems Napoli's in the lead there. So they've been really impressive. Look, it's really not out of the question that even all three avoid relegation. That hasn't happened very often in Serie A's history. I would say I think Hellas Verona is a pretty safe bet for sure to avoid relegation. I would say I'm going to give Brescia an edge over Lecce just because I think they have a better squad, and with Corini back, they'll be okay. But it wouldn't shock me if all three stay up. I think Spal's going to go down. I've said it all year. I think Sampdoria is very vulnerable. So let's see what happens. But I think at least one of those stays up, likely two, and not out of the question all three.
Absolutely. Alessandro, same question directed at you. Out of the three teams so far, who's impressed you so much, and who do you think is going to survive the drop?
I wonder if any of them will survive the drop, but I don't know. The Lecce players are showing some more grinta than the others. Brescia is more dependent on some individual player, and Verona as a collective can. It really depends on the day, So I don't know if any of them will survive. Probably, I would say Lecce, just because of the grit they have in some game, not every game, unfortunately. So that's it.
Yeah, fair enough. A question from our good friend Patush. David, would you compare this Cagliari side to, say, that of an Udinese in 2010 and a more recently Atalanta side that we have seen make that charismatic leap? Can the Sardinians sustain it? I know you touched on it a little bit earlier. I too, David, expect Cagliari to drop off the pace. I think they're going to get tired, lethargic. That mental fortitude of coming back after the break really takes its toll on teams. How do you think Cagliari is going to go towards the end of the season, David?
Well, if you wanted to make the case that they're going to hold on, you could point to the fact that they're going to get back 2 out of their 3 best players from last season. So they're going to get Cragno back fairly soon. I thought he was the 3rd best goalkeeper in all of Serie A last season. Now, at peak performance, is he a big upgrade over the way Olsen's played this season, which is really one of the biggest surprises, how much better he is? I'm not sure it's a big step forward. You add Pavoletti, now that he was really good. I don't think he comes back till February or March. I think it's about the same timeline as Chiellini. You got to wonder how he fits in with João Pedro. Now, obviously, the third one was Barella, who's now at Inter. So you can't say that there's a margin to get better At the same time, I do think they've overachieved a little bit. Nainggolan was really bad at the beginning of the season. Some people may have forgotten that. He's been great the past 2 months. Let's see if he can hold on. I kind of have my doubts there. I think the comparisons to Udinese and Atalanta is really the best case scenario. To me, they are more similar to Torino last year. Torino, they were kind of the outside contention for a Champions League spot till the very end, and I thought they played pretty similar to Cagliari. There are teams really built in the image of their manager. They make it very hard to play against them. They don't really defeat themselves. So, hey, I'd love to be proven wrong because they really are a great story. But I think they end up in 7th place, something like that, which, again, at the beginning of the season, I know there was a lot of hype on their mercato, but that would still be an unbelievable season for them. But I also think they are kind of going to be a one-season wonder. I think next season they go back to being a team that maybe avoids relegation comfortably, but also isn't in the types of conversation we're having for them now.
Yeah, they're just not that club with the history and the prestige to back it up season after season. I get what you're saying. Just staying on Cagliari for 30 more seconds, Pellegrini is enjoying quite a good season for them as well. Do you think he can start to make his way into the starting team for the Azzurri for Euro 2020, David? And if not, who would be your first choice left back?
Yeah, I mean, because you look at the Azzurri, I mean, I think between Bellotti and Immobile, they are going to be pretty good at striker. I think Zaniolo is going to take over for Chiesa or Bernardeschi. So they're going to be really good there. But then the wing backs become really the area where they could be better. Look, Pellegrini is really impressive. I'm kind of surprised Roma let go of him. Good for Juve for getting him. He's really impressive. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, Biraghi, I think you Inter fans have seen, he's not really a difference maker. To me, he's just an average player and does neither good nor bad. So, yeah, I think Pellegrini has an outside chance of doing that. We've seen Mancini make some pretty bold decisions. So, yeah, I like it. That's a good show.
Cool. Thanks for answering those questions from the fans, David, and the listeners. I'm going to throw it over to Alessandro, who's got a couple of things to ask you as well. Take it away, Ale.
Sure. I have a couple of questions about Inter at this point. And let's put two questions together in kind of way. What do you think are the most realistic possible in this winter window? And also, do you see any Bosman signing for this summer?
Great questions. Well, I think Inter has shown in the past few years, like they, in a lot of ways, they followed a little bit the blueprint that Juve did to reach this level. And this was even before Marotta came in. And now they have Marotta, just like Juve. They've developed great relationships with agents, which is what you need to do these Bosman signings. Now, they haven't dealt with Raiola. Aside from that, all the other big agents they work with. So they are going to be a player definitely in the Bosman sweepstakes. People that don't follow Serie A the way we do don't realize how much players love living in Milan. Like, it's a place where, their girlfriends, their wives want to be. Don't underestimate how much that is. So Inter have always been able to attract, even when they weren't good. So now that they are good and have Conte, I definitely expect them to continue to be players in the market there. As far as January, I think they are going to be very active. To me, the fact that they got eliminated in the Champions League and they don't have those revenues doesn't change a thing for their plans. They are no longer in financial fair play restrictions. Suning have very deep pockets. The revenues have gone up a lot. So I think they're going to be very active. Of the top teams in Serie A, I expect them to do the most work. I think they end up the January window with a starting caliber midfielder, a backup striker, and a wing back. And my guess is it wouldn't surprise me if all three of them are players that Conte had previously on his squad. So I think Vidal at Inter would be a tremendous move. I'm in favor of anything that makes the rivalry between Juve and Inter better. I mean, can you imagine Juve Twitter, Vidal going to Inter? He's kind of the lost child that they all want back. That would be a lot of fun. Sign me up for that. I think there's a decent chance of it. Could see maybe Marcos Alonso, who did well for Conte at Chelsea, knows Serie A. I think he's an upgrade over Biraghi. You add him there. You can use Asamoah in the midfield when he's healthy. He's pretty good there. And then I think they'll get a backup striker. I think Giroud checks some boxes. I'm not sure if he's okay with being a backup because it seems he wants to play more. But look, Lautaro and Lukaku can't keep playing every game either. So I think they do at least 2 significant moves, maybe 3 in January. I'm very curious to see what they do, but I think Inter fans are going to have a good time.
All right. Thank you so much, David, for answering those questions from Alessandro. And thank you, Alessandro, for bringing that question forward. That's all we're going to have time to speak to our amazing guest, David. So thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to Inter Worldwide, man. And we look forward to the next time we're able to have you on. And again, thank you for everything you do with the Calcioland podcast with your co-host, Alex. It's fantastic.
Well, I can't thank you guys enough. I appreciate your enthusiasm. Like, I try not to do too many podcasts. I feel like people must be sick of hearing me as is, but you guys do really nice work. So I was very happy to do it. Keep up the good work, and happy holidays to you, all the listeners. Buon Natale and Felice Anno Nuovo.
Grazie. Thank you so much, David.
Take
Have
care,
a great
guys.
day.
Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Hope you listeners are still sticking around, though, because Alessandro and I do have one more important thing to cover. We are going to talk about the upcoming fixture against Genoa. Alessandro, coming up to Genoa, the general consensus with the fans is the same thing. Let's go into this match like it's the goddamn Champions League final, get the 3 points, and have a happy holidays, yeah?
Yeah, that's the idea. But then the reality is slightly different. As you guys know, our midfield at the moment it's not existent basically. So that's the main problem, I think. And then we have also the attack that is not completed. So the idea is to go there, take 3 points, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, and see you next year. The reality is that this is gonna be a battle. I know on the other side we have let's call it a good friend in Motta, but he's coaching Genoa now, and I don't know how soft he will be on us. What do you think, Anthony?
I think that he will be a little bit soft on us, to be honest. I really think any Inter player who graduates out of that treble year is uno di noi right until the very, very end. So that doesn't mean he's going to take it easy on us, but it really doesn't mean he's going to get all Gattuso-like in the dressing room and start whipping players up the arse and saying, we have to win this match. This is make or break. It's against Inter, blah, blah, blah. Why is it so important to win this game? Because despite the negative result against Fiorentina, despite going out against Barcelona in the Champions League, what David just said on the podcast is true. We are doing very, very well with a limited amount of resources. We probably have 0.8 times the squad that Juventus has, not even half. We have less than half the squad that Juventus has to work with, and we're keeping up with them step by step of the way. Now, we get 3 points against Genoa tomorrow or the next day, wherever you are in the world, and we then have a 2-week break. And in those 2 weeks, Sensi will be okay. Asamoah will be okay. Gagliardini will be okay. Politano will be 100%. And of course,
Sanchez.
So will Sanchez. Yeah, that's the big one. Alexis Sanchez comes back. He's already back in training. And then we'd be about 80% of the way to getting Nicolo Barella back to fitness as well, Ale. So I'm sure you agree. It's just about getting these 3 points to keep us fighting in the right spot until we have our full amount of resources left. Would you agree?
No, absolutely. I mean, coming new year, hopefully also with some new face showing up through the transfer window and all the injuries that should recover. It's basically the beginning of a new season. So these 3 points are important. Even if we don't get all 3 points, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, this is it. We're not gonna win anything this year. Because we are there. I mean, we are 3 point difference with Juventus and 1 game to play. So I bet no one would expect that at the beginning of the season, but
Yeah,
we're there.
yeah,
So
100%.
we should be happy. Our goal at the beginning of the season wasn't to win the Scudetto, but it was to reduce the gap and get back to Champions League without playing the last game like it was the Third World War. The main goal was like, okay, let's get closer to Juventus as much as possible, and we are there. I mean, we are the same level of Juventus, even if we have one team, while Juventus has basically two teams, and if you look at the data, the numbers of um, the money they have in every sector, it's amazing because it's like 2 or 3 times more than us. So we're getting there, but we are not there yet. And no matter what happens, we should be happy, and we should get all the positive, like all the signs that we are going the right direction with the coach, with all the people working there, and with most of the players. Then, of course, we should make some adjustment, sell somebody, buy somebody, but uh, at the moment it's a work in progress, and I'm really happy. I mean, if we get those 3 points with this team at the moment, meaning with one midfielder, um, one young midfielder that play like, I don't know, 10 minutes in Serie A, with a defender probably that's gonna play as a midfielder, and another young attacker that play, I don't know, 2 or 3 pieces of Serie A game. If we get 3 points with this team, I mean, I'm pretty damn happy at the end of the season.
Yeah, especially in the halfway point of the season. So just before we do head off, let's talk a bit about who we expect to field against Genoa. Handanovic in goals. Whether or not Conte switches to a back four, I'm not too sure. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he does not, seeing as though the defensive department is the department where we're not lacking any first team injuries. I expect to see Skriniar, De Vrij, and either one of Bastoni or Godin, or maybe even Danilo D'Ambrosio as well. Probably D'Ambrosio now that I think about it, because in the middle of the park, we're not too sure who we'll see. We could see Agome, as Alessandro said, he's only played 10 minutes in Serie A. It wasn't a great 10 minutes, so I wouldn't be starting him. But we will be using any fit players that we have. And at the moment, the only 100% fully fit midfielder is Matias Vecino. And he's probably our worst midfielder on the ball. So in terms of who's going to play alongside Vecino, it's unclear. There are rumors that Antonio Candreva could be moved into the center of the park, and that in turn will make way for Valentino Lazzaro to play on the right-hand side. Politano, his name is in the media headlines for all the wrong reasons. Rumors of him linking up with a move to maybe Parma or even Atalanta or Fiorentina. We don't know yet. So it remains to be seen whether or not he is playing. Romelu Lukaku is 100% going to start, and he will start alongside Esposito. So before we do head off, Alessandro, let's talk a little bit about Sebastiano Esposito. It's going to be his first start, man, in Serie A, and this guy is lethal for his age. 17 years old. It doesn't matter who you play him against. He won a penalty against Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League. He knows what to do on the pitch. He knows what to do with his head. He can find the back of the net. Do you think we can see a really good first team debut start from Esposito this weekend, Alessandro?
I hope so. I hope so because the guy, you can see, really wants to impress Conte and to impress all the Nerazzurri fans. Sometimes it's even too much, because I think was the last game in Champions League. He put so much passion in it. Was he made a couple of fouls that made us lose some time, and that wasn't really good for the team. But it's so young and doesn't have so much experience that you can forgive all he's doing. And I'm so happy that he's gonna play this game finally. I think Lautaro and Lukaku are so tired that probably they deserve um, some time. And I was hoping to see Esposito in the last couple of games for this reason, because Brozovic, Lautaro, Lukaku are the players that they are always there, and they were so tired, and you could see that game in, game out. And so Brozovic is not playing. He's gonna have a good 3 weeks of vacation now, and that's awesome. It's gonna be like a new player in January. Lautaro as well. So again, whatever happens, it's just it's good. Whatever happens is good, because then we can rest, regroup, improve our team, and start the new year as a new season. And that's very important.
I would agree. Before we leave our listeners, just a quick prediction, Alessandro.
So, um, I I don't know. I think 1-0 for Inter. Goal by Lukaku. I don't know. The dream would be Esposito, but let's be realistic. And I say Lukaku is usually very good with the smallest team. So let's say 1-0 Lukaku.
I think we win as well. I think we win as well, but on air, in order to do the anti-jinx and not end up like Fiorentina, I say that we draw the game 0-0. But I hope I'm really wrong, and I think I will be. And that's all we're going to have time for on this edition of the Inter Worldwide podcast. I would like to give a shout out to David Amoyal, who was great, and thank you for coming on to him. And also, very importantly, thank you very much to my regular guest, Alessandro. All the best, man.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to have time to do another episode this year. Otherwise, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I hope you have a wonderful time.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being a part of the 2019 journey with us, Alessandro. We look forward to seeing you next year. You guys will definitely hear from me once or twice more before the end of the year. And we've got some content ready for you in the 2-week break. For all of those who are taking holidays, have a happy holiday, stay safe, and also have a Merry Christmas. And from Inter Worldwide, we will speak to you very, very shortly. Ciao ragazzi, forza Inter.